Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. For those of you that are new, my name is Juan Londoño. Today's topic is the most challenging topic in the world. Well, maybe not the most challenging topic in the world, but it is interesting. The question here is photography art? Unlike some of the how-to videos that I've been putting out lately, this is another Photo Philosophy Friday topic, which I call the 3 Fs. You know, my spelling sucks. So Photo Philosophy Friday, and we're here and we're ready to discuss it. I personally know a couple of people on each side of this divide. I know a couple of people that definitely consider this art, maybe more than a couple of people, probably a bunch of people. But I do know a couple of people that are questionable when it comes to that, in terms of how they feel. So let's discuss it. Let's see what we come up with. So when photography started, and we're talking way back, you know, when I teach my photography class, I go into great detail, and we go through it quickly, but we go over the details of the years and the people involved. We're not going to do that here. But when photography first started as a science, basically, you were dealing with steel plates back then. You weren't dealing with very thin film, which is where the name came from, right? It was metal plates, and it took light, sometimes up to 8 hours, to engrave an image in a metal plate. When this light came through a lens, which, you know, it captured an image, came through a lens and hit the metal plate, it could take 8 hours to engrave an image. So you know that photographing people really wasn't the intent of this apparatus, right? The first practical uses for it were really capturing history, right? Recording history, basically. You could point one of these cool new things, you know, at a mountain, at a small town that was about to be developed, and then you can do it after it had been developed, and you can compare a before and after, and you can hang that up in a restaurant, in a city hall. You can show what the town looked like before people came into it and what it looked like afterwards. So definitely for recording history, it was very, very useful. As time progressed, however, things were starting to get added to these devices, right? So you could adjust how wide and how closed this aperture was. Ooh, that was a novel concept. Then things got even more interesting, and you can adjust the speed of how quickly it opened and closed. Ooh, there's another innovation. And we take all these things for granted nowadays because every camera has it, right? And of course, later on, flash came into the picture. No pun intended. And with flash, you could go indoors where it wasn't very bright. It was actually even dark. And you can light up a whole scene. You can light up a group of people. You can light up interiors of homes and cathedrals and just different places. So it opened up this photography to many, many, many topics. Now, in terms of the people that helped out in this, you know, photography journey, the French, more than any other originally, were pretty much, you know, the ones involved. And they, you know, invented what we consider the modern day camera. But here's the funny thing about the French. As quickly as they invented it, they dropped it. They saw really no use, no practical use for the camera. So it got picked up in the United States, mostly in New York. And that's where they started to push the development of new films, you know, all types of things, right? Making it smaller, making it faster. And photography started to pick up momentum, even in other countries like Germany. So photography started to pick up momentum, and the French really didn't consider it art. I mean, and I kind of understand why, right? France was full of beautiful museums with old sculptures and paintings and drawings and all kinds of things made of wire and made of different media, right? So why would they consider a photograph something you push a button and it comes out, right? You develop it, and that was more science, right? You had to figure out a way to get this image onto a film, and then from the film onto a paper. That was definitely science, and I could see why that was a challenge. But around these early days, when the Americans started picking up momentum, popular names started showing up. Names that we might have heard, if you're walking through the mall, definitely Ansel Adams, right? You see his calendars still on sale today. Dorothea Lange and Diane Arbus. These are names that you might see or have seen. And if you haven't, check them out. They're pretty interesting people. So these were the pioneers of American photography. And there are many others, by the way, men and women. So as times moved along, these people started getting very creative and producing amazing photographs. And the American museums raised a brow and said, ooh, we might have something here. So photographers like Ansel Adams started to exhibit in galleries and museums across the country, and many other photographers as well. So you can imagine that it was only a matter of time before the French and other countries went, maybe the Americans have something going on here that we need to pay attention to. And that's exactly what happened. Now this is all great. So we've concluded that the Americans definitely considered photography an art, and that the French and other countries started considering it an art. But the question is still there. Do you and I consider photography an art? So basically, for us, is photography an art? So before we can even tackle that sandwich and wolf it down, we have to first wet our palate. So if you have your water, great, take a sip, take a break. If you don't, this is a time where I say pause the video, go get your water, and because I need you guys to stay healthy. So here's my water. You know how much I love water, right? So let's continue with this topic. So I looked in the dictionary, and this is a pretty popular dictionary, and I was looking for art. What is art? So here's what I found, okay? So gosh forbid anything should work completely smooth, right? Doesn't usually go that way. This is life, right? So my battery died and I had to switch it out. So I went to a popular dictionary and I was looking for the definition of art, and this is what I found. Okay. The expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form. Can't even read my own handwriting. Such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. Now, this sounds great, except I didn't read anything about photography, right? They were talking about paintings and sculptures. So the thing to remember here is that every dictionary is different too, right? This is a pretty big dictionary, but different dictionaries have different meanings, and you might find a couple that that throw photography in there. But really, the question is, has photography been left out? Because I heard a couple of things that were interesting too that apply to photography. Specifically, look at this line here: producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. I love that ending. You know, in my 30+ years, I know I've created images that are beautiful, and some were powerful. And I've seen pictures my whole life from other photographers that were both beautiful and powerful. Sometimes they're just beautiful, and sometimes they're just powerful. Sometimes they're both. So something that might help us move along here and decide if photography is art is, let's take a look how the rest of the world sees it, right? Peter Lik, L-I-K, look him up, awesome photographer. He was the first photographer to sell a photograph in the millions. How much? $6.5 million for a photograph. Now, this was in 2014. Look up the picture, enjoy it. Look it up on the web and enjoy it. It's a beautiful picture. It's called Phantom. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody in their right mind that would pay $6.5 million for a piece of paper. Doesn't happen. It's got to have some artistic value to it. It's got to be art, let's face it, right? And this is where this definition, it's got to produce, it's got to be, so producing works, definitely, right? To be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. $6.5 million. Whoever purchased that photograph saw something in it. They saw either beauty or an immense power. And I'll tell you, when you see that picture, you're going to see both, probably. And that's what I was going to say. This person probably saw both in order to spend $6.5 million. Now, did Peter Lick put this on sale for $6.5 million? Or was it not on sale and somebody just kept raising the price until he let it go? You know, I don't know the exact history. I need to look that up because it's kind of interesting. But I did see his gallery in Hawaii, and it's absolutely beautiful. And that was a year after he sold that photograph. But I did see a copy of the Phantom there, and it's breathtaking. So we can stay here all night. It's getting into the evening here in Atlanta, and we can stay here all night talking about other expensive photographs to try to determine, is photography really an art? Because, you know, if we go through enough people that are paying hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars for photographs, we may just use that as a decision and say, well, you know what, it's got to be an art. Otherwise, people wouldn't be doing this. But we're still bugged here with the same question, right? For you and I, is photography an art? You know? Is it for you and me? At the end of the day, I don't care what it is for everybody else. Is it for you and me? So I've been working for many years as a photographer on the side. I did it almost full time for a while. But I undoubtedly consider photography an art. I know how challenging it is. I know how technical it is. And I know how creative I need to be to crank out a good image. And I also know how troublesome the equipment could be at times. So when you put all that together, especially the word creativity, right? When you throw that into the mix, you start looking at, you know, it's an interesting thing because you can argue that all fields, you know, painting, sculpting, they all have a technical side and a creative side, right? There's the tools of the trade, and you have to learn them. Yes, and that's the technical side. Whether it's some kind of gadget you hold in your hand, or it's some kind of brush, or how you mix it, those are the tools of the trade. But let's face it, a camera is full of electronics. I mean, we're talking the ability to Wi-Fi and network and, you know, and then you have to understand how it copies things to cards and the options you have. And cameras now have thousands of options. I mean, more than you could ever imagine when I started using, you know, film. Cameras were already loaded with things, but nothing like today. So we're at a point here now where, you know, it's not just being creative and understanding how to compose an image and then understanding colors and understanding, you know, all different things, right? Your subjects. But you have to understand the technical side of photography, which has turned into a degree in itself, right? You can go to college and study that. Now that doesn't make it an art, but putting it all together, I believe does. I used to think that the biggest difference between photography and the other arts is that I can actually make a mistake in photography and I might end up liking it. And the more I think about it, you know, and especially after meeting artists, you know, through my life and watching them work and watching them mess up and then cover it up, they can cover it up, but sometimes they just leave it and they go, you know what, I wasn't expecting that brush stroke, especially like on a modern painting. I wasn't expecting that brush stroke, but I kind of like it and I'm going to leave it there. Plus, even if I didn't like it, it happened and I'm going to leave it there anyway. So I think it happens in the other fields too. You might be sculpting something and you might mess up and go, oh, well, that's the way it's staying. And it may, you know, to other people, we're very critical of each other, right? Artists, in my case, photographers, and I'll talk about that in a second. But people are more relaxing. You know, they see something they like. They don't know all the intricacies of what we had in our mind when we were trying to create it. They just like it and they buy it. That's the way it goes. So here's the funny thing on the point I just touched on. I don't consider myself an artist deep down inside, but I do consider myself a photographer. Well, the funny thing is I consider photography an art. So the conclusion there for me in my own mind, and everybody's different, you have to ask yourself. I think the conclusion for me is that I'm probably not where I'd like to be, right? Or I don't feel like I am where I'd like to be. But I'll tell you what, I am still working on it. And at the end of the day, I hope you are too. That's what this is all about, right? It's about analyzing ourselves and our work, and questioning ourselves all the time. Are we where we want to be? And if we're not, what are we doing to get there? And then the second part to that is, when we get there, are we happy where we want to be, or do we want to get to another level? And then we have to come up with a plan on how to get there. It's fascinating, right? So let me know in the comments below if you consider yourself a photographer, because you might not even be at that point yet. And if you consider yourself an artist, I'd love to know. I'd love to read your story if you want to share that. Really means a lot. So this was a much shorter video than some of the others because this wasn't a how-to video. It was just more like a thought process, photo philosophy Friday. That's what it's all about, right? Just letting our mind wander a little bit. If this was helpful or if you found it interesting, please give me a like. Subscribe down below on this side, and don't forget to hit the little bell, the notification bell. That will let you know when I publish another video. Until the next time, my lovely, lovely, lovely friends, please continue taking care of yourselves. Drink your water. I love my water. And we will catch up again in the next video. From the heart always. Ciao for now.